Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we are stripping away the surface of your daily life to look at the machinery running underneath it.
Yeah.
We've got a stack of research here that argues you're running a biological operating system that is, frankly, outdated, easily hacked, and currently being exploited.
It sounds a bit dystopian when you put it that way, but, the research really supports it. We tend to think we're these rational agents making choices based on logic.
Right.
But when you look at the neuroscience of speed, the psychology of design, and, well, the economics of dopamine, a very different picture emerges.
We're navigating a high-tech world with Stone Age hardware.
Pretty much.
And that hardware is incredibly fast, but also surprisingly buggy. We're going to cover a lot of ground today, from how your brain judges a threat in milliseconds to why you can't remember phone numbers anymore,
Oh, definitely.
to the specific design tricks apps use to bypass your willpower.
It's a mix of neuroscience, classic design theory from Don Norman, and some pretty stark reports on what they call the dopamine economy.
So let's start with the speed. There's a number in the research that just blew my mind: 39 milliseconds.
Yeah.
Can you set the scene for us?
Sure. This comes from a really fascinating study titled Very First Impressions.
Yeah.
And it cuts right to the core of how we process reality.
Okay.
If you walk into a room and see a face, you might think you take, I don't know, a second or two to decide if that person is a threat. You look at their eyes, their expression. You think it's a deliberative process.
But this study found we don't need seconds.
Not even close.
Yeah.
They showed participants neutral faces. So no smiles, no frowns
Yeah.
for these tiny, tiny lengths of time.
Like how tiny?
They started with 26 milliseconds, then 39 milliseconds, and then a much longer exposure of 1700 milliseconds, so almost 2 seconds.
Yeah.
And the finding was that the judgment of threat that people formed in just 39 milliseconds was essentially the same judgment they made when they had nearly 2 full seconds to look.
39 milliseconds. That is literally faster than a blink. A blink is what, 100 to 400 milliseconds?
Yeah.
So before I have physically blinked my eyes, I've already decided if you're dangerous.
Exactly. You've decided if someone is a threat before you've even consciously registered that you're looking at a person. And the researchers, they think it's because of this thing they call the low spatial frequency hypothesis.
Okay, let's get a bit technical. Low spatial frequency. What does that mean in plain English?
Okay, think of a really blurry photograph. You can't see the wrinkles or the exact shape of the nose. Those are the high-frequency details.
The specifics?
Right. But you can see the broad, coarse shapes. You see the shadows, where the eyes are, the sharp angle of a jaw, the general vibe of the expression.
So the brain strips away the detail just to get the gist first.
It doesn't even strip it away. It just prioritizes the blur. Our brains have this magnocellular pathway that's designed to process these blurry, broad shapes instantly. And evolutionarily, this makes perfect sense.
Right. If I'm walking through the jungle, I don't want to stare at a long, thin object for 2 seconds to see if it has scales.
Exactly. If you wait to see the scales, the high spatial frequency detail, you've already been bitten. You need to react to the snake-like shape immediately.
We prioritize speed over accuracy for survival.
Totally. It's better to jump away from a stick than to step on a viper.
But we aren't dodging snakes anymore. We're judging people. And this bleeds into what psychologists call thin slicing, right?
Thin slicing is a term that was popularized by Ambody and Rosenthal, and it just refers to our ability to find patterns based on these incredibly narrow windows of experience.
And it's surprisingly accurate.
Their meta-analysis showed that judgments made in under 5 minutes are often just as accurate as those made after, extensive interaction.
The examples in the notes are just wild. There's a study where people judged a teacher's effectiveness based on a 2-second silent video clip. 2 seconds.
And here's the kicker. Their ratings of those teachers correlated strongly with the end-of-semester evaluations from students who had sat in that teacher's class for months.
That is terrifying. It basically says our first impression is our final impression.
In many cases, yeah. The research extends to judging sexual orientation. About 55% accuracy from photos jumps to 70% with just a 10-second video. There are even studies on detecting personality disorders in 30 seconds.
Wow.
The brain is a pattern-matching machine. It doesn't wait for the full data set. It just grabs the first chunk of data, that thin slice, and fills in the rest.
But this creates a huge conflict in modern life. We have this stranger danger system that fires in 39 milliseconds, telling us to be wary. But then we have this other source, the Psychology Today piece on small talk, that says our happiness depends on ignoring that very system.
It's a genuine paradox. Sociologists talk about weak ties. Your barista, the mail carrier, the person standing in line at the grocery store. Our ancient brain often flags these interactions as high risk, low reward.
Right. It scans the face, sees a stranger, and the alarm bells go off.
Don't engage. Keep your head down. Look at your phone. But the data clearly shows that interacting with those weak ties, just a simple hello or chatting about the weather, it boosts your mood and your sense of belonging significantly.
So to be happy in a modern society, we essentially have to fight our own operating system. We have to tell that 39-millisecond reflex to just stand down.
You have to manually override the autopilot. But, and here's the pivot doing that takes effort. And effort is a finite resource.
Which brings us to the bottleneck. If our brains are so fast at judging, why do we feel constantly overwhelmed? Why does it feel like I can't hold a thought for more than a minute?
Because while your perception is lightning fast, your working memory is tiny. And this is where we really need to talk about cognitive load theory.
Okay, we've touched on this before, but this connects to Miller's Law, right?
George Miller, 1956. The magical number 7 plus or minus 2. Miller argued that our working memory, the sort of scratch pad of the brain where conscious thought happens, can only hold about 7 chunks of information at once.
7 seems generous these days. I feel like I'm operating at a solid 3.
Well, in a high-information environment, 7 is vastly insufficient. And cognitive load theory breaks that load down into 3 types. First, you have intrinsic load.
That's just how hard the thing is.
Exactly. If you're solving a calculus problem, the intrinsic load is high. You can't really change that.
Okay. And then there's the load that helps us learn.
That's germane load. That's the effort your brain uses to actually create schema's mental maps to store information. That's the good kind of effort.
And the third one is the villain of our story.
Extraneous load. This is the effort required just to process the presentation of the information. If a website uses a terrible font, or a door has a confusing handle, or an app is just cluttered, that burns up your cognitive slots. It's wasted energy.
So if I have 7 slots and the design is bad, 5 of them are used up just trying to figure out where the checkout button is.
Precisely. And the internet is basically an extraneous load-generating machine. We're also seeing what's called the Google effect, or digital amnesia.
Right.
Because we know we can access information instantly, our brains have stopped trying to store it. We prioritize access over understanding.
I feel that personally. I used to know every phone number for every friend I had. Now I don't even know my partner's number by heart. But isn't that just efficiency?
Well, the problem is that deep understanding requires those internal schemas. If you offload everything to the cloud, you lose the ability to make complex connections yourself. You become a processor, not a retainer.
And the multitasking.
Oh, it's disastrous. Heavy multitaskers actually show reduced working memory efficiency. We aren't getting better at juggling, we're just getting worse at focusing.
So let's look at the landscape so far. We have a brain that judges threats in 39 milliseconds, but has a tiny working memory that's easily overloaded. How do we survive?
We rely on design. Good design is essentially a set of external supports for our weak internal hardware. This is where Don Norman's The Design of Everyday Things becomes like the Bible.
I love Norman. He basically gave me permission to stop blaming myself when I can't work a shower handle in a hotel.
And you shouldn't blame yourself. That's Norman's core thesis. He talks about affordances. An object should just tell you how to use it by looking at it.
Give us the classic example.
The door. A flat metal plate on a door affords pushing. It physically blocks you. It says, push me. A handle affords pulling. It invites your hand to wrap around it.
But we've all run into the Norman door, the one with a big inviting handle that you yank on, only to slam your face into the glass because it was a push door.
And you usually feel like an idiot. You think, I'm clumsy. But Norman says, no, that is a design failure. That door lied to you. It increased your extraneous cognitive load.
Norman also talks about 2 gulfs that design has to bridge, the gulf of execution and the gulf of evaluation. Let's break those down.
The gulf of execution is the gap between I want to do a thing and how do I physically do it. Remember old VCRs?
Vividly. I want to record this movie. That's the goal.
But the execution was, holding 2 buttons, turning a dial, setting a clock. The gap between your goal and the mechanism was huge. That's a massive gulf of execution.
And the gulf of evaluation?
That's the gap after you act. You press the button. Did it work? Is it recording? If there's no feedback, no little red light, no beep, you are stuck in the gulf of evaluation.
So good design closes those gaps. It lowers the cognitive load so we can function with our limited 7 slots of memory.
Exactly. And designers have even codified this into laws. the laws of UX, in our source stack. Take Jacob's law. It says users spend most of their time on other sites.
Meaning don't get cute.
Don't reinvent the wheel. If the search bar is usually at the top, put it at the top. If you put it at the bottom to be disruptive, you're just creating cognitive friction. You're burning up the user's mental energy.
There's also Hick's law, which I face every time I open Netflix and just stare at the screen for 20 minutes.
The paradox of choice. Hick's law says the time it takes to make a decision increases with the number of choices. It's logarithmic. You give someone 3 plans, they pick one. You give them 50, they freeze.
And since we're talking about speed, that 39 millisecond brain, we have to mention the Doherty threshold.
This is the speed limit of attention. For a computer interaction to feel instant and keep you in the flow, the response has to be under 400 milliseconds.
That connects back to our blink, doesn't it?
It does. If the tech responds faster than you can lose your train of thought, you feel essentially merged with the machine. It feels like an extension of your mind. But if it lags, even by half a second, the illusion breaks.
Okay, so up to this point, design sounds like this benevolent force. It helps us navigate the world. It reduces our load. It helps us make decisions. We love design.
That is the optimistic view. But we have to look at the dark side. Because the people building these systems, the apps, the marketplaces, the feeds, they've read Don Norman too. They know about Miller's Law.
And they figured out how to weaponize it.
That's the shift to what our sources call the dopamine economy.
Right. I think the biggest misconception people have is that dopamine is about pleasure.
That's it. We think, I feel happy.
That's the common understanding.
But it's technically incorrect. Dopamine isn't the chemical of having. It's the chemical of wanting. It's about reward anticipation. A neuroscientist, Wolfram Schultz, did these famous experiments with rats. He found that dopamine neurons don't fire when you get the cheese. They fire when you see the signal that the cheese is coming.
So it's the anticipation that drives the behavior.
Yes,
Huh.
and specifically something called prediction error. If a reward is predictable, you press a lever, you get a pellet, and dopamine levels actually drop over time. It's boring.
But if it's random?
But if the reward is variable, sometimes you get a pellet, sometimes nothing. Sometimes a jackpot dopamine goes through the roof.
That's the slot machine mechanic. That's B.F. Skinner 101.
And that is your notification center. That is, pull to refresh. You don't know what you're going to get. A like, an angry comment, a viral video, nothing. That uncertainty is biologically engineered to keep you seeking.
Sean Parker, the Facebook founder, was incredibly blunt about this. He said the goal was to consume as much of your time and conscious attention as possible.
And he admitted they did it by exploiting a vulnerability in human psychology. That vulnerability is the dopamine loop combined with low cognitive load. They want to bypass your thinking brain.
So let's look at how this hits our wallets. The ACR Journal stats were pretty damning. 67% of digital consumers make weekly impulse buys.
It's not an accident. Think about what we just discussed with design. To get you to buy, they need to remove the gulf of execution. They need to make the action frictionless.
Amazon's one-click ordering.
It's the masterpiece. It removes the think step. It removes the do I really need this step. It bypasses what psychologists call System 2 thinking, the slow, rational, budget-checking part of your brain.
It's a direct line to System 1, the fast, impulsive 39-millisecond brain.
You see, you click. By the time your rational brain wakes up, the receipt is in your inbox.
And they stack triggers on top of that, the countdown timers. Only 2 items left at this price.
That triggers the scarcity heuristic. It hits your ancient threat detection system. Loss is approaching. Your brain panics and acts to prevent the loss. It doesn't matter that the timer is just a snippet of code resetting every hour.
Your magnocellular pathway sees a threat to your resources.
Exactly.
Right.
And the most sophisticated version of this right now seems to be the TikTok Shop model. It just blends all of this together.
It's the perfect storm.
It is. You're scrolling through entertainment so your dopamine is flowing. You're thin slicing content rapidly. Then, seamlessly, a product appears. The aesthetic is slick. That's the aesthetic usability effect. And the friction to buy is zero.
It weaponizes the flow state. You're in the zone, and buying just becomes another interaction in the flow.
It does. It keeps you in that Doherty threshold zone, fast responses, constant engagement, so you never have that moment of pause to ask, do I actually need a laser projecting keyboard?
It's interesting that the research showed scarcity messages and countdown timers as the most effective triggers. We all say we hate them. We say, oh, I know that's fake.
But we click. Because the design works on a subcortical level. We're fighting supercomputers with a brain that evolved to find berries and avoid snakes.
So the design laws that were meant to help us
The three of the path.
are now being used to grease the slide. So where does that leave us? We have this hidden operating system that is built for speed but prone to errors. Is the solution just to go live in the woods?
I don't think we can disconnect entirely. I mean, we live in this world, but we can patch the software. We can introduce artificial friction.
Explain that. Because usually we want to remove friction.
If the world is designed to be frictionless to exploit you,
Yeah.
you have to build your own speed bumps. You have to reintroduce the gulf of execution that Amazon so cleverly removed.
So deleting your credit card info so you have to type it in every time.
Exactly. Force yourself to engage System 2.
Yeah.
If you have to walk across the room to get your wallet, you break the dopamine loop. You give your rational brain a chance to catch up.
It's about recognizing the manipulation, too. When you see a countdown timer or Norman Door on a website, you can name it.
Labeling it takes the power away. You can say, that is extraneous cognitive load, or that is a scarcity trigger. It moves the process from the unconscious to the conscious.
You stop being a rat in Skinner's box.
And you start being the observer of the box.
We started by talking about how fast the brain is, how we judge the world in a fraction of a blink. But it seems the real superpower in the modern world isn't speed, it's slowness.
It is. It's the ability to pause, to refuse the immediate judgment of the stranger, to resist the variable reward of the notification. The operating system defaults to fast, but you have root access. You can choose to slow it down.
Here's a question to take with you today. Next time you feel that urge to click or that flash of judgment about a stranger, ask yourself, who is actually in charge right now? Is it you? Or is it a designer in Silicon Valley who knows exactly how your 39-millisecond brain works?
Are you the user? Or are you the product being sold?
Something to think about while you wait for that one-click order to arrive. That's it for this deep dive. Thanks for listening.